I would like to bring up Sean Fitzpatrick from UNE, who's going to give you a welcome, and we are so delighted that UNE hosts us here in this beautiful space at Innovation Hall. Sean.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Lisa, and welcome everybody to UNE. On behalf of President Herbert, all the faculty, all the staff, we're really excited to have RevUp here and be a part of it. I'm especially excited for tonight because in our Office of Marketing and Communications, we're always talking about how to leverage the Maine brand in what we do. And we do it in different ways depending on the programs that we're speaking about. So sometimes, for example, we speak at a national level and talk about how we're unique in Maine. So you saw the dirt piles out back there. That's the new location for our medical school, Maine's only medical school. It's been on the Biddeford campus for 50 years. We're moving it up here, and it'll be co-located with Maine's only dental school, Maine's only physician assistant program, OT, PT, and all these students, imagine them out there in 2 years in their scrubs and white jackets, learning with each other and from each other so they can provide better care and collaborate out in the healthcare workplace. So it's really special at a national level. Then for something that's quintessentially Maine, our Biddeford campus is on the ocean, where the Saco River goes into the Gulf of Maine. 4,000 feet of shoreline, a beach for students, and it's just an awesome place to take a vacation and definitely go to college. So we talk about the Maine location there. And what could be more Maine than our Tangier, Morocco campus? It's a study abroad campus in Moorish design with these state-of-the-art labs. And so that's UNE at a global level. So we have all of these different lenses on where we are and what we're doing. And then our brand campaign, and I dragged those banners in there earlier today so I could brag, is what's your part? And that's really part of the national conversation where we talked to Gen Z students and they said, the world's a mess. We want adults to be honest about it. We want to be part of the solution. And so we're featuring their stories in the campaign. So a lot of different ways to look at things. I'm excited to hear the panel talk about how different brands leverage that today. So I'm going to give up the mic. But I do want to invite folks to come back for more RevUp events. And also we've got the MPRC Golden Arrow Awards are going to be here in a week, so the Maine Public Relations Council. And then the Brodersons from Maine Ad and Design will be here in June. So we love having people come to our little art loft here for events like this. So we hope to see you soon. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, John. Thank you. How many people are in this space for the first time? Well, look at that, Sean. Look at that, all new friends. At the next RevUp, there will be complimentary dental cleanings from the, are we good on that? No, okay, thank you. We really appreciate you hosting us. I also wanted to acknowledge our other sponsors, Cross Insurance and also Bowdoin College. And now I would like to bring up David Regan, the Director of Finance and Strategy for Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, who is a partner with us in so many events.
Hi, I'll be brief. Just opening remarks as a sponsor. It's great to be able to sponsor events like this. We can do that at Harvard Pilgrim in part because we're a not-for-profit health insurance company, which is a great model for health insurance. I'm happy to be able to do it. I actually know one of the panelists. Jenny and I went to a leadership class together a few years ago. And brand is important to Harvard. We're, like I said, a New England brand, and we have an office in Maine, and it was something we talk about a lot. So I'm interested to hear this conversation and hear what the panelists have to say about brand in New England. Thanks.
Thank you, David. Thank you. The nonprofit business model. That's something that I'd like to learn more about for a newspaper company. And you should check the Maine Sunday Telegram. That's a little tease for you. Okay, so now it is my pleasure to introduce the Press Herald business editor, Will Hall, to kick things off here today at RevUp. Thank you.
We're going to be kind of casual and sit down for a few.
So Thank you, Lisa. Thank you to our sponsors. And thanks to all of you for being here this afternoon, especially being indoors on a beautiful day. We know it's not easy, but welcome. This is the second forum of the Press Herald's RevUp business series, which is focused on the theme of entrepreneurship. And looking around the room and talking with some of you beforehand, I'm really reminded that we are fortunate in the state of Maine to be home to a lot of really talented entrepreneurs and many energetic, successful young companies. We think there are a lot of lessons to be learned from that success. And those lessons aren't just for startup businesses. That's why we're calling this RevUp. And one of the challenges, I guess, for a new company, a new business, is how do you start up your brand? How do you create a brand? Whether you're revving up, starting up, how do you build up your story? In an age of information overload, when we are constantly bombarded by messages and all sorts of things vying for our attention, how do you cut through the noise and make your voice heard? A lot of businesses, we think, in Maine have a built-in superpower when it comes to building their brand, the fact that they are in Maine. We often take it for granted. But that identification with the state, that connection, can really go a long way. At the Press Herald, we've written about the Maine brand a few times. My colleague, Ray Ruthier, just a couple weeks ago, for example, reported about how hundreds of businesses, if not thousands, use the term mainly in their names, from mainly tubs to mainly teeth to mainly trash, and I could go on and on. There's truly a Maine for everything. Back in January, I wrote a column mentioning a group of very expensive restaurants, each branded as The Maine, which have cashed in on the Maine mystique. The only thing that's kind of unusual is they're 6,500 miles away in Dubai. So, go figure. So Ray and I and people like, in the newsroom are familiar with the Maine brand, and we think it's part of business reporting. But there are some people who are much more expert about branding than we are, and those are the folks next to me. So let me introduce them now. First to my left, Colleen Croteau, the COO of Maine Beer Company. Colleen joined Maine Beer in 2012. Over the years, she has helped lead Maine Beer Company's multiple expansions and growth, from a small team in a tasting room to more than 100 employees and a 45,000 square foot facility in Freeport. Maine Beer Company now makes about 24 different brews, I believe, and distributes products in 32 states. Colleen is also the president of the Maine Brewers Guild and has sat on the board of directors since 2018. Next to Colleen, we have Scott MacLeod. Scott is the head of planning at VIA, creative and strategy agency, marketing agency based in Portland, where he's worked for 11 years. He oversees VIA's research, brand and business strategy, media planning, and analytics. His clients have included Maine-based brands like LL Bean, Unum, Wex, as well as national companies such as Arm & Hammer, Lowe's, and Chick-fil-A. Scott serves as a mentor for startups through the Rue Institute in Portland and Northeastern University. And then on the end, Jenny Kordick. Jenny is the executive director of Maine Outdoor Brands, a network of businesses working to create and grow the state's outdoor recreation economy. Founded just 6 years ago, the organization now has over 150 members, including familiar brands like LL Bean and Sugarloaf, but also some you probably haven't even heard of. Prior to joining Maine Outdoor Brands, Jenny directed advocacy campaigns at the Wilderness Society, both in Maine and in Washington, D.C. And you already know who I am. So to get the ball rolling, I have a few questions I'm hoping that our panelists can address and that you folks may be curious about too. We'll also have a chance to address your questions towards the end of the hour. So the first question I have for you guys, and it's like such a softball question, but a good one to start with. What does the word and the identity of Maine really mean, and what does it mean in your industry? What is the value that it has in your organization and the way you do business? Anyone want to take a shot at that?
I don't mind going first. The word Maine is in our business name, so it obviously is very important to us. But while thinking about this question, I really realized that there's no better people to answer it than our founders, David and Dan Cleban. So I am going to show just a short video that's going to really explain why Maine Beer Company came to be.
That's a good way to start.
He really had a spark for the brewing. I saw it from his brother, I kind of know. I just asked him one day, do you want to be an attorney for the rest of your life, or would you rather be a brewer? And he said a brewer.
I was an attorney, fresh out of law school, and was working at a law firm in Portland. A partner there who'd been homebrewing for decades, and he's like, well, I'm going to be making beer. Would you like to come and be my assistant? So I said, sure, it'd be awesome. So I started doing it at home with my brother.
We did it out in his garage, outside his garage. In the wintertime, one time we did it on my front porch, 3 feet of snow, and we just shoveled out an area and had the lobster cookers, and we're just making it out in the snow.
The first couple batches, frankly, weren't very good, but as time went on, I got better at it. I just loved the process of creating new recipes and trial and error.
And I don't know if it's a year that went by that we were futzing around, homebrewing or whatever. I think I started to get the sense that he knew that being an attorney was just a job. And I saw his passion, his love for making beer growing.
My brother had the idea of starting a brewery. He was, I think antsy to start a new business. He was self-employed as a financial advisor and just was looking for something new. He knew that I had a passion for making beer, so he's like, well, would you rather be an attorney or a brewer? And it was really kind of a no-brainer. From day one, we kind of had a clear division of labor. I was the brewer. I made the beer, I designed the recipes, I was the process person. He was the business side of things.
Just shit luck that my brother had the one part, and I had the other.
We spent, I don't even know, weeks, months trying to come up with what were we going to call ourselves.
Even if I could remember what the other names were, I wouldn't tell you, because
one day I think it was my brother actually that thought of it. The state of Maine in and of itself it's a brand.
Maine is it's the way life should be. It's vacation land. It has this mystique, kind of like Alaska.
It has a vibe to it that people really enjoy, and they take back home with them.
If I'm right, and other people that don't even live here, love Maine the way that we love Maine, then why not put it in their face and just call it the Maine Beer Company?
Great.
I really couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, that is a pretty fulsome answer. Anything else that you'd like to add? And also, Scott and Jenny, it means different things in different industries. What does it mean to you guys?
So for me, Via competes on kind of a countrywide stage, right? So our biggest competition is in San Francisco and New York and kind of the big ad centers where you're competing for clients and dollars and all of that. So for us, it's just this independence of all that. You're outside the bubble. You're not swayed by trends. You're kind of, you've got an independent spirit and an opinion that clients want to hear about. There's something where you're not pandering to, what the word of the day is. You're really standing apart in a way that that clients can believe in. I also definitely agree with the vacation land piece, because during the summer, clients want to come and visit our offices and meet in person, at least post-COVID, get on the water and just expand their minds. They're able to think in a way that they could never, ever do if they're in a cube and somewhere in New Jersey. Like, that just doesn't happen. So it's kind of two different things. It's kind of this independent, stubborn, opinionated, committed side of things, but it's also this free, open, just place of possibilities. For us in the creative industry, that's magic.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's, you'll probably guess, working for the organization Maine Outdoor Brands. The brand of Maine is really outdoor forward and outdoor focused. And for our industry, the outdoors of Maine are just the inspiration for us and everything that we do. And outdoor recreation in the state is just really what sets us apart. And so that's just infused in our brand. I mean, we have 4 seasons here. We have the coast, we have mountains, we have virtually like any outdoor recreation activity you would want to do, from surfing to skiing, mountain biking, kayaking, right? It's really amazing. It's the inspiration for products. It's where we're providing just world-class outdoor recreation opportunities. And it's where products are also being like tested and designed and thought up. So for us, it's really just the outdoors, infused in everything. And it's neat to hear you all both just talk about the outdoors as well, right? It's much bigger than just the outdoor industry.
So there's some common threads. It also sounds like there are slightly different angles, different facets of the brand that are important to you because you're in different industries. You're trying to do different things. How do you take those qualities of the brand of Maineness and make it work in your field, within your organization? How do you actually operationalize that brand?
For Maine Beer Company, it all goes back to the original business model that Dave and Dan had, which was to make one beer really, really well, to have a small handful of employees and take very good care of them, and to give back to environmental nonprofits to try to help our world. And while we do make more than one beer now, and we have over 100 employees, we do take very good care of our employees. We pay 100% of health insurance. We're competitive with compensation in our industry. We contribute to retirement, free beer. And more importantly, our commitment to the environment has increased, and we've been able to give over $2 million to nonprofits since we started, and $1.7 million of that has stayed in the state of Maine. Wow. Thank you. To me, the key part about it is just we have employees that work really hard. They care about our mission, and they get to be part of making a great beer that also gives back.
Great. It's good. I mean, operationalizing it. So Via's been around for 30 years. And at one point, it had a Silicon Valley office. It had an office in Europe. It had an office in Boston. And at some point, post-dot-com bubble, we decided to just shut all that down and bring everything to Portland. I think we can operationalize the Maine spirit because you're bringing lots of minds who have been around the industry and have worked on big brands and have worked on big campaigns but you're bringing them to an environment where they're able to think differently and think more creatively. We've been really, really careful about not expanding to other offices, and even hiring remote workers has been this thing that we've kind of been really careful about, because you want people to buy into the ethos of independence and this spirit that we've really cultivated. So it's been an interesting balance, because in some ways that holds you back. Like the tough part about being a Maine-based agency in a world where borders don't matter is that you have to fight against feeling too provincial and too detached from what's happening in the world. So we have to kind of fight against that by who we hire and how we go out and visit clients. I mean, we're constantly on the road, visiting stores, talking to clients, and just being plugged in while also being independent. So that's been kind of the secret sauce for us, because I don't think we ever want to give away the advantage of having this outpost of outsider thinking that clients can really believe in.
Oh, that's good. I think that any company that is based in Maine and wants to leverage the Maine brand really has to care about Maine, right? And wants to give back to Maine. And so it's neat to hear Colleen's example, right, of just their ethos as a company of giving back, right? And we see that with Maine Outdoor Brands too, and all the brands that want to be a part of Maine Outdoor Brands, right? They're inherently want to be associated with Maine and see the value in promoting our state and protecting the resources in our state. And I think that just collaborative spirit and nature of wanting to give back and support Maine and love and pride of Maine is really key.
So there are a couple of things that you guys mentioned that have a lot to do with the difference between Maine and other states, other geographies and territories. When you introduce yourself, when you introduce your organization to someone on the West Coast or someplace, someone who is not familiar with what Maine is, how does it go over? What do people respond to?
I think in my industry, people recognize that Maine is known for craft beer and really good craft beer. And there are more breweries per capita in Maine than any state in the nation. So immediately they're thinking, this beer, it must be good, right? It must be quality. I think personally, Maine Beer Company, we obsess with the quality of our beer. We have more people that work in our QA, QC lab than on our sales team. And we like to think that we set the bar very high for quality in our industry. I also think they resonate, as we said, with vacation land, with the outdoors, and with a company that cares about sustainability and cares about the environment. And I think that helps with the connection, creates the partnership, and introduces the brand out of the state of Maine.
Yeah, I think that's dead on. For us, Maine usually isn't the first thing we talk about, and partially because of what we've talked about up here, which is when you talk about Maine, there's a set of values that come along with it. There are a set of associations that come along with it. And in a lot of ways, when you get outside the border of the state, those associations are what you want playing back in people's minds. So we talk about our independent spirit. We talk about our employee ownership. We're 100% owned by the employees of VIA, which no other big nameless agency holding company is ever going to be able to stand up to. So there's all that. But it's also, we say that we are this combination of strategic smarts and unbound creativity. That you put those two things together, and that's what VIA is. And so Maine ends up being part of that story, but you're leading with the values that really make up what VIA is. And so I think by doing that, you redefine what people think of Maine. Because, I mean, sometimes we'll run into clients and they'll get really excited about coming up here and having a lobster roll. And they'll wonder, have you made it, when's the last time you made it to New York? And we're like, yeah, we're there kind of all the time. And, we also happen to be a state that is a purple state, so we have a very balanced view on what people are really thinking in this country, which, again, you think about the ad industry, it is very bi-coastal, and they have a lot of blind spots that I think an agency like ours, by being plugged in, can give a different kind of perspective on. So I don't know, it's one of those things where we know who we are and we know what we stand for, and we lead with those, and by doing so, kind of redefine how our clients think of Maine and think of our place, and it's something that they've really bought into.
Yeah, I think the example that I'll share is that one of the things we do as Maine Outdoor Brands is promote brands beyond the state of Maine. So we have some big trade shows in the outdoor industry. Outdoor Retailer is one of them, and it's been in Denver the last few years. It just moved back to Salt Lake City. And so one of the things that we do as an organization is take some of the emerging Maine brands out to the show. We get a big booth, and it's under the banner of Maine Outdoor Brands, right? So it helps some of these startups and emerging brands exhibit at the show and have their foot in the door, and they wouldn't be able to do that alone. And so, but they're doing it under the Maine Outdoor Brand umbrella. And it's amazing to kind of stand at this booth and just have people, see Maine and come up to you. And it's incredible how many people have connections to the state of Maine, right? So I went to summer camp in Maine, or I vacationed in Maine once, or like LL Bean, of course, in our industry is just so iconic and well known, and really kind of having that anchor brand. It makes sense for people like, oh, LL Bean is there, Old Town Canoe is there. Of course, there's all these other Maine brands too. And so I think we have a lot of cachet as a state, and a lot of people that have some kind of positive connection to the state of Maine, and are excited about seeing good things coming out of the state, are kind of expecting good things to be coming out of the state, and are happy to support it. So I think that's a fun thing to do, is just go outside of Maine, right, and see what people think of it.
And it sounds like for all three of you are saying it's something very organic. This is not an act you're putting on when you go out and you represent. If someone is looking, at you or your business or your brand and trying to figure out what the main brand is, it's really more about something that is already part of you. That is either inherent in the state or inherent in the way you do business. This is not an act.
No, I mean, I think it's more important to be of Maine than to be in Maine. Just understanding what kind of perception you want to get across and what you stand for, and how that connects to Maine. Like in some ways, if you let just the word Maine do the work, you're letting other people create their own image of you. So it's back to, we do work with LL Bean. We don't lead with the conversation on Maine. You lead with the idea that we're about the sheer joy of the outdoors. If you're Wyman's, you are talking about Maine blueberries, but you're also talking about wild and the concept of wild, and you're planting that association between that and the brand. So I think actively really knowing what you're about and knowing how that connects to Maine helps you tell a Maine story that's unique to you. And in a place where you said it well, people don't have attention. People don't pay as much attention to brands or companies as we all think they do. And so finding something that's going to stick in their minds and strike an emotional chord is so important. And just, if you can tie Maine into that, that's a massive win.
Our aesthetic is really simple. It's a very clean white label on a brown bottle. Our tap handle is a white ceramic tap handle. And I think that goes back also to the business model of sometimes less is more. And white space is important. And with Maine Beer Company, we do distribute out of state. We're in 32 states, but we don't send very much beer out of state. And we like to keep it hard to find. We like to keep it fresh and special and rare and unique. And I think that, the same can be said about Maine. It's hard to get to. It's special. It's unique. And it evokes good feelings that you want to be part of.
I'll almost add that I mean, it's a relatively easy sell, right? I don't think we want to be in a, Scott mentioned New Jersey, right? Like, I'm glad I don't work for New Jersey outdoor brands. Having but Maine outdoor brands, right? It makes sense. It's relative, you know.
I used to live in New Jersey, but I think I'd much rather be interested in Maine outdoor brands. Since you mentioned, another state, are there downsides to the Maine quality, to the Maine brand? Is there an association, some sort of negative association that you confront when people understand that you're based in Maine or that you're representing business from Maine? Do you ever run into some obstacles just because of that?
It's a good question. I think with vacation land sometimes, right? We, especially in the outdoor recreation space, a lot of people automatically think about the recreation as tourism. And tourism is a really big part of our industry, but it's not the only piece, right? And so I think that's one of the things that we think about a lot, is how are we kind of talking about the benefits of the outdoors and outdoor recreation, not only for people who visit Maine, but for the people who live here and the businesses that are based here. I see Katie Shorey from RevUp Maine, and I know you all think about this too, right? It's you can come and live in Maine. You don't have to just vacation here. And so I think that's one of the things I see sort of evolving as Maine. I mean, we're one of the only, one of the only states whose average age decreased last year. And so we are starting to see an influx of people moving here. And I think that's kind of part of the brand that is, the state of Maine it's going to be evolving. And I'll add as well, we're still one of the oldest states and one of the whitest states. And so I think that's another, it could be a disadvantage. At the trade show I mentioned, I talked to this young Black woman who worked at a summer camp in Maine, and she said, Jenny, I had an amazing experience. I loved it. There's not many Black people in Maine, right? And that's that's a disadvantage. She doesn't live in Maine anymore. And I think as our brand as a state, right, some of these things we want to see continue to evolve and be a state that's welcoming and inclusive, and it's something we have to work at.
For us, being located in Maine is logistically challenging for our wholesalers all over the country, because they need to ship the beer from Westbrook, Maine to wherever they're going, California, Florida, cold and fast. And so that obviously costs money, and the cost of our beer gets increased the farther away you get out of state, and that can affect the brand. So we work really closely with our partners to try to make sure that we're in the right spots and at the right price, and that the beer is still fresh. But just the location to getting to us can be hard.
Yeah, I think just I would say that the disadvantages have declined over the last 10 years or so. I think Portland's a much different city. I think more people have visited Portland and have gotten a taste for what it is. So I think it's less of an uphill climb. I think the challenge comes in just, our industry is all about being on the pulse of what's happening, right? So there's a benefit to seemingly being in the middle of that. And so you have to work really hard to tell folks that, yes, we're plugged in. You have no idea how many people have moved to Maine, how many young startups are happening in Maine, the talent pool that's growing here, the fact that the RU Institute exists, and having cohorts of startups and kids coming through there. So, I mean, it's a story you have to tell. But I think it's becoming not only an easier one to tell, but a more believable one. And so for us, it's really exciting. I think, honestly, the biggest challenge is winter travel. If I'm being really, really on it, trying to get from Atlanta to Portland without, some sort of delay or paying through the nose is just, that's just a logistical thing. But if that's all we're we're up against, then we're in a good spot.
You know, each of you and your organizations do different things. I'm sure have very different marketing needs and marketing goals. Are there any common threads, though? Any sort of general strategic approach that works particularly well because of your association with Maine? A way of doing things marketing-wise that makes sense because of who the state is?
Well, I think one of the advantages we have is just the amazing like outdoor places in Maine, right? So using that imagery, using those videos, I mean, the video Colleen showed was amazing, right? It makes you want to like be here, and I think just that inspiration factor is something that I think we really can use and leverage and think about in the marketing sense.
Yeah, our marketing revolves entirely around our giving initiatives and our commitment to the environment. And I think the outdoors, you know, people associate us with taking care of the environment and the beautiful scenery, you know, that we have in the outdoors of Maine, and protecting it and allowing inclusive access to land in Maine for everyone.
Yeah, I it's not as big a part of our story.
Sure.
In a lot of ways, we're trying to seem bigger than we are, bigger than, you know, a one building, you know, 60-person shop in Portland, Maine. So as we market, back to, you know, what we stand for, our values, how that connects to Maine, we really lead with those, and let people kind of come around and figure out, hey, you guys live in, you know, the oldest library in Maine and have a really inspiring place to work, and it's kind of this magical thing that we want to be a part of. Yeah, we're a little unique in that sense, but I think yeah, I will say from the talent side of things, we lean into Maine a lot. Is this escape, is this refreshing place where you can come and have a different kind of work environment than you're going to have in nearly any other state in the country. And it's interesting how we've been able to attract much more younger talent, especially post-COVID, as people reconsider where they want to be. So I think from the talent side of things, the Maine brand helps us more in the marketing than in the agency as a whole.
Are there, again, you do different things, you have different marketing objectives, but in general terms, are there words of advice that you can share about how to make the most of the Maine brand and how to make it part of your business and work to your advantage?
I think with any business, you have to make sure the quality is there. It's the most important thing before you try to expand. And you need to have a story. And I think if you can weave Maine into your story, you're going to be set up for success if the quality is there.
I think that's dead on. I'll put it two ways. One is you need your own version of your Maine story, what Maine means to your business, and more importantly, to the audience you're trying to reach. It's really easy to get wrapped up in where we live and how we love it. But, you know, if you looked at, I did a little bit of analysis before we got into this on just the amount of interest in different states based on Google search. And within New England, Maine just kills it. Maine is leaps and bounds ahead of Vermont and Massachusetts and what have you. But when you start to compare against Portland, Oregon, or you start to compare against, you know, Nashville, there's a lot of other hotspots that are really interesting, right? And I think we could probably all think about, you know, what brands from outside of Maine have we bought recently because of where that brand is? And the number's probably pretty small, right? So it's back to that story, and not just leaning on having Maine on your package, but having that mean something to you and having that mean something to your audience. If you know what you stand for and how that connects to Maine, it just helps you tell that story in a way that occupies space in people's minds, gets them to think about you a little bit more, and gets them to just hopefully have your company be one that they want to do business with.
Yeah, those are both great. I think
maybe one just to add is that we see a lot of collaborations happen in the outdoor industry. And I know this has been happening with the brewing industry as well with the Brewers Guild. And I think that's like another part of the Maine brand is like this collaborative nature. And so if you're teaming up with another Maine brand or another Maine nonprofit, right, that's like kind of a natural way to tell that story of Maine and supporting one another and giving back. And I think that's something kind of special we have.
One last question, and then we'll have some questions from you folks. Are there any other states that are doing this really well, that are sort of pitching themselves and their brand and sort of having that resonate the way Maine's identity resonates?
I have an interesting example that maybe gets at this perhaps. So Arkansas. Arkansas right now, it's where Walmart is headquartered, right? That's, I don't know, one thing you may or may not know about Arkansas, but the Walton family right now is investing a lot in outdoor recreation in Arkansas. So they've been investing millions of dollars in building mountain bike trails in Arkansas. I think somebody in the family is just really big into mountain biking, and from their company perspective, they have to attract talent to the state, right? They're thinking about these kind of quality of life things, and so right now in the outdoor industry, we see Maine, we see Colorado, we see Utah as kind of some of the top states in the outdoor industry. We're starting to see Arkansas increasing. And I think it's a really interesting example of kind of a brand of a state shifting, right? And being intentional about that brand. They're of course investing a lot in it. But yeah, we're seeing Arkansas kind of in the outdoor industry, at least like a state that is really growing and working on changing their state's image and perspective as being kind of one of the top places in the country and even the world to go mountain biking.
And New Jersey's coming next, right?
Yeah.
I think in beer, Vermont stands out to me as another state that's doing really well. Maine and Vermont go back and forth, depending on the day, on top breweries per capita. There's a lot fewer, not very many people in Vermont, but regardless, there's really good beer in Vermont, and it's become also a craft beer destination, tourism destination. You can easily revolve your entire vacation around a trip to Vermont, just like you can in Maine. So that comes.
Another good example.
Yeah, I think Virginia for our industry, it's near the ad school down there. There's a center point with the Martin Agency, who does all Geico's work. It's just a really nice hot spot there that I think is really interesting. I think I've just heard a lot about Virginia in general, is being a destination, one of those smaller cities, kind of like, or smaller states, kind of like. And Tennessee's another one that you hear about where there's just kind of a buzz about it, and it's kind of an escape with a little bit of an interesting vibe going on. So
Great.
But I don't think either of them are doing as good a job as Maine's doing.
Good. Maybe we can open it up and see if you folks have any questions. Right there, the gentleman with the red sweater.
Oh, thanks.
The flow on.
That's all right. I'll just talk. Thank you. So you're consumer products companies. LL Bean is, our exciting growth with Brew, with the great work that the startup folks are doing and things like that, are not in consumer products companies. They're in tech companies. They're in biopharmaceutical companies. They're, because of the other companies here, veterinary companies. Is there an opportunity for non-consumer companies, which may be a good part of our growth, to take advantage of the Maine brand?
Good question.
It's a good question. The first challenge that comes to mind for me is seasonality. In Maine, we all know how crazy busy everybody gets in the summer, but in the winter, it's hard to be able to maintain the staffing and the access to materials and all of that for a business like ours. And, you know, I don't know if a tech company would have the same seasonality challenges that we would.
Yeah. And I think you look at IDEX, WEX, Unum. I mean, you can. I think there are lots of examples of really big non-consumer brands that have deep roots here and a global reach. And I think you add that with the Rue Institute plus the quality of living. And I think, you know, when you think about the non-consumer side of things, I think it's sometimes, you know, if you get into specialty hiring and things like that, it can be tough. But I think it's, again, an easier sell to bring people to Maine these days. And I think you have a lot of an increasing track record of companies that have shown that it's not only feasible, it's profitable. So I'm hoping there'll be more of that.
Yes, hope to get out of thing.
I mean, my guess is that that question about how the brand translates to a non-consumer company, it may be more about other audiences, other stakeholders, rather than consumers or an end user. It might be recruitment. It could be investors. There could be probably other folks where it's more about the quality of life and bringing somebody here, and maybe the less obvious ways of marketing the company, I guess.
Yeah, I think less obvious, but they back to having your own version of the main story and where it fits in. I think there is an independent spirit to all three of those brands, and to any brand that I think is going to take root here. So it's back to just having your own riff on that and using Maine as a way to communicate to whatever that audience is in a way that's relevant and resonant with them.
Mm. A question.
My name is Amarpreet Khori. I'm a faculty member in the School of Business at University of Southern Maine. I've been here for the last 16, 17 years, and I've seen like Maine rank very high in terms of quality of life, top 5, but in terms of business friendliness, it's like 48, 47, 50th, and last 16, 17 years, the ranking has not changed. So what can businesses do to educate, to improve the infrastructure and the workforce resources? Because that's the main issue with Maine. Thank you.
Another good question.
There are definitely challenges to doing business in Maine. In the beer industry, the tax rate for beer is I believe, 5th highest in the nation in Maine. So it's expensive to make beer here. It's also really hard to access local ingredients for beer at our size. The climate is not set up to grow hops in any measurable quantity. The malt industry is getting a lot better, but we still need to ship our malt from the Midwest. So I think if we can improve, and the Maine Brewers Guild is very active with legislation on ways to make small, really, really small breweries, much, much smaller than Maine Beer Company, able to survive by not raising taxes and trying to bulk source ingredients. I think the more that we can work with our legislators to make it easier for small craft breweries, the better off my industry will be.
I'll just build on that. I mean, the Brewers Guild is a great example. Maine Outdoor Brands is similar, right? And we just formed 6 years ago, and our goal as an organization really is to bring the outdoor companies together to say, how can we collectively grow as an industry and make Maine a really good place to start and grow an outdoor business. And so we've been working with the Department of Economic and Community Development. We advocated for the creation of an Office of Outdoor Recreation within Economic and Community Development to really be thinking about the outdoor industry and outdoor recreation as an economic growth opportunity for Maine, and what does that look like to start to change that business climate. So I think it's been exciting to me to sort of see some of the momentum in that space. And granted, I think we do have a lot of work to do, but there is at least this kind of recognition that if we want to, really kind of grow these strong Maine businesses, right, we have to be doing more to ensure they're going to be successful.
Other questions?
I'm curious, do you see any generational issues? I think about my kids in their 20s and 30s, mid to late 30s, and they live life very differently than I do, and what I pay attention to, where I get my advertising, etc. Their use of the internet is very different than mine. Whenever I travel, I mean, I've lived in Maine a long time, but I grew up in Georgia, Atlanta. Everybody wants to know about lobster, you know. My kids could care less about lobster, you know. And so do you see generational issues that you're going to need to address to reach that generation, much less even younger? Or is it too generic? Is it more generic and the same stuff works for everyone?
I think it's a really, really good point, because you still run into that thought. We were in Colorado for a snowboarding competition, and when they heard that we were from Maine, the announcers were talking about lobster rolls, and it's just kind of like the default, right? I think for a younger generation, yeah, they've come out of COVID, they don't want student debt, and they want a way to live according to their own ideals. I think there is this spirit that I'm not going to do what my parents did. I'm going to find a better way of making things happen. And I think this state can give those conditions, right? It's not a place where, I have to just, sit in a cube and kind of do my thing. I can create, I can be close to the ocean, I can be close to the mountains, I can, there's just so much potential here that I think is incredibly appealing. By the way, you've got the jet port here that can get you to wherever you need to go, and so many direct flights. Just like travel's like not an issue anymore. When it's 20 years ago, it probably was. So I think the conditions for growth here are really great. It's just getting that word out, getting that story out, and positioning Maine in a way that it feels like that potential exists for more people. I think on top of that, we still got to figure out, how to make housing and things like that affordable to younger generations. But I think, you look at the development in Biddeford and kind of south of Portland, there's a lot going on. So more needs to happen, but I think the conditions are there, honestly.
There are generational challenges for sure. We've been around for almost 15 years, but we have been pretty loyal to our original plan, and our package format has not changed. And most importantly, I think our mission of the giving back and treating our employees well, I think that resonates among many generations, and especially these days, even though studies show, consumers are buying less beer in general, younger generations are, they still resonate with a company that is sustainability focused and that has similar to values to theirs. And I think in my industry, I think people will still gravitate to those kinds of values.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we're seeing the younger generation really wanting to know, what are the values of the company, what do you care about? Like, if I'm working for you, how is that kind of contributing to something, good in the world? And I think we do have, this spirit of Maine of that giving back. And it's what Scott said in terms of telling the story. I think it's really important, especially for that younger generation.
So that sort of helps bridge that generational gap or that divide, which makes sense. I think we have time for another question.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jason Clark. I'm a real estate agent with Coldwell Banker in Kennebunk Port. I have a question. We're wondering if you could speak a little bit about the way you use the Maine brand and the Maine experience to draw in customers from other states while still making that message relevant to people who've lived here all their lives. Like my Maine story as a longtime Maine resident is going to be different than somebody who just comes here for 2 weeks in the summer. So how do you make the message relevant for both audiences? Is there a way to do that?
Oh. Anyone want to take that on?
I fully caught that question.
Yeah, can you repeat that quickly?
Just hard to hear.
relevant? Making the message relevant to people who are coming here from other states versus potential customers and clients who have lived here all their lives. Because a vacationer is different than a longtime resident. Like their sort of needs and wants may be different. So just kind of reconciling both.
Yeah, we're lucky. We get visitors year-round coming to our tasting room, but the local season is definitely, you know, when the tourists are not here. But we need to make it a meaningful experience every time they come, right? We can't just assume locals are going to come drink the same beer they drank last weekend at the same location, especially with over 170 breweries in the state. So we try to keep our experience in Freeport unique and refreshing year-round. And in the summer, we really just tried to manage, you know, make sure that we're properly staffed for the influx of customers that come through the door and that we're still able to deliver that really quality, top-notch experience, even though the traffic patterns in the taste room have changed. But we're also lucky to have all of these other great breweries in Maine that people want to come visit, whether they live here or not.
Great. Well, in the interest of branding, we have one more video to show you, which tells a different story and also tells the story of the Maine brand, I guess. So I guess we're going to see that now.
Top.
Four.
The human spirit needs to be outside and needs that reset that nature gives you. Just a few hours outside or even a few minutes outside changes your outlook on the day. And I think people are realizing that, and that's the piece I'm optimistic about.
Yeah, I think when people think of Maine, obviously they're going to think of lobsters and lighthouses, but I think it's starting to catch on that there's a lot more to do here. You can bike here, you can rock climb here, you can kayak here. Anything you want to do outdoors, you can do here in Maine.
Maine is unique in that it brings a little bit of something for everyone. You've got hunters, you've got fishermen, you've got athletes. Every season has something that you can enjoy outdoors. It's a little cliche, but you know, we've got the mountains to the sea, so there's a little something for everyone.
The outdoor industry here in Maine is one of the highlights of Maine, without a doubt, you know, and we cover everything from the appreciation and respect of all the natural resources, as well as the innovation. The companies that make things here right now, they're making high quality products and offering incredible services that bring everybody to Maine, but also, you know, hopefully help us export good things out of Maine.
In Maine's outdoor industry, we really see high quality products, high quality experiences. It's led to us having this brand and this reputation of being an outdoor state and having an outdoor industry that is producing some of the best experiences and products that you'll find in the world.
I think the outlook for Maine's outdoor economy is going to be very strong, and I think it's going to continue to grow with the influx of people coming into the state. I mean, what other state can you boat in the summer, go skiing, snowmobile, ice fishing? Maine has a lot to offer, and I think that GDP growth is going to continue to increase for the outdoor economy.
I think the Maine outdoor industry is really resilient. I think the outdoors gives us that hope. There's so many ways you can react and respond that can be positive.
Maine is unique in that we have some of the largest and most iconic outdoor brands, and we also have this new wave of outdoor entrepreneurs and startups that are taking a chance and getting into this industry. I think those things together are just a really powerful combination, and it's something that gives me hope for the future.
I've always had a passion for the outdoors, and I kept on seeing the growth in the economy, the growth in tourism, and it really gave me the confidence to take that leap of faith and become an entrepreneur.
The outdoor industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry in the state of Maine, but the ripple effects are much bigger than that. When you look at what outdoor recreation provides, it helps us all be healthy and active. It really is core to our quality of life here in Maine. It's helping attract and retain talent and businesses. It's something that's really central to our entire state and our entire state's outdoor economy.
So I think that the future is super bright for the state of Maine, and the businesses that are planting the flag in the ground that we're an outdoor business, whether you are a campground or a gear company, a guide service, it does not matter. I think that the future is really bright for our businesses in the state of Maine that have invested in outdoor pursuits. It's the rising tide that lifts all boats.
Thank you to our panelists, and thank you to our sponsors, and thank you all for being here.